Can I be honest with you guys? One of the most frequent negative comments we get is about how the church has been a negative influence throughout history. And many times in the comment sections, we get to see people from both sides of this argument really go at each other in an argument that many times is not healthy or beneficial for either party. And so today, what I want to do is just speak to people who think that the church has either been all good or all bad throughout history. And I want to give just some simple things. I'm not going to list the sources. I'm going to trust that you guys know how to go look those up and find them for yourselves. But if you do some quick Google searches, you will find credible backing for these claims, as I did earlier today and throughout my career in ministry. But when you study the history of the church, you will find an innumerable number of good deeds done for the community. You will find that Christianity has shaped nations, ours included. It has benefited many people. Christians to this day are still oftentimes the first and the largest force on the ground after hurricanes and disaster relief. Christian food pantries are some of the largest suppliers of food in our nation. And the Christian church in America supplies much of the Christian church around the world with water and food and supplies and Bibles and so many other things, including medical treatments that they can't afford on their own. Just for example, at Passion Church here this year, we did a free medical clinic where we had 2 doctors and a dentist all here doing free medical treatments in a medical bus that we paid to have come in, that we support monthly as a mission, and they do free medical care for people who cannot afford it. And we had dozens of people come through who had abscesses in their teeth or lumps on their lymph nodes or different medical conditions that could not afford to be treated. And that's just one of the things that our church and many others like us do. However, it would be naive to think that the entirety of church history is filled with well wishes and butterflies, because it's not. There are many times in the history of the church, unfortunately, that God's word has been perverted for personal gain, where people, instead of using God's word to build his kingdom, what we would say in the church, have used it to build their kingdom for personal gain financially, for trying to gain respect. In other periods of time, pastors were much more respected than they are now by and far. And there were many pastors who used it to promote personal agendas. One of the ones that gets brought up an insane amount of time is that some of the church used biblical passages out of context, might I add, to promote slavery and racism in America. And that is true. There are records of well-known pastors doing that in the early 1900s, late 1800s, and beyond. And unfortunately, some still today. What I would counter that with is, if you look at one of the largest forces that helped free people from slavery and from oppression throughout history, is also the church. So my point in here is not to say that either side is completely right or completely wrong. My point in here to say is that the truth is somewhere in between. And I would argue that it's somewhere in between, not because of the imperfection of God's word or God himself, but because when you put people together in something, we're all kind of messed up. We all make mistakes.